I was halfway through a conference call when my phone started buzzing uncontrollably. First it was my mom, then my sister, then my uncle. I didn't think much of it. Maybe they were just trying to get hold of me for something routine. But when I finally picked up, my mom's voice shattered the calm like a scream. I can't breathe," she sobbed. The words were almost incoherent through her tears. Before I could ask what was wrong, my sister snatched the phone from her, her own voice breaking as she said, "Dad had a heart attack. You need to get home, now." My heart stopped. I stared blankly at the screen, numbness crawling over me like a cold wave. I didn't hesitate. I barely remembered what I was working on. The deals waiting, the clients counting on me. Everything faded as I booked the earliest flight back home, an overnight red-eye that would get me there as fast as possible. My hands trembled while I packed. It wasn't just fear for Dad's health, it was guilt, too. Guilt for the years we'd been distant, for the times we'd clashed and barely spoken. But still, he was my father, and I couldn't imagine not being there if something happened. The flight was a blur of exhaustion and restless thoughts. I replayed every memory of Dad, the laughter, the arguments, the moments I thought we'd never get back. I told myself this was a chance to make it right, to be there for him no matter what. When I finally landed, I expected chaos. Ambulances, doctors, nurses rushing in and out. But none of that was waiting for me. Instead, my cousin Mark picked me up, greeting me with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "He's resting at home," he said, almost too casually. "Not a full heart attack, just a scare." That should have been a relief, but something felt off. Dad's eyes, when I saw him later, didn't match the calm words. They flicked toward me with something unreadable, something that made my skin crawl. I shook off the feeling. Maybe it was the exhaustion talking. I walked into the house expecting to see a man recovering. Hooked to machines, pale but grateful I was there. Instead, I found the entire family gathered around the dining table. Mom, Dad, my sister, my uncle, and a lawyer I barely recognized. On the table, a thick stack of papers. Dad smiled thinly. "There he is. Took you long enough." My breath caught. The room buzzed as they launched into a rapid-fire conversation about the family business, debts, and how I was the only one with assets that weren't tied up in liabilities. I was expected to sign away everything I'd built in the last decade. My condo, investments, my share in a tech company. It wasn't just a legal meeting. It was a trap. The air in the room felt thick, almost suffocating. As my family spoke quickly, words tumbling over one another about debts, assets, and putting things in order, I felt like I was trapped in a nightmare. Mom's eyes darted around nervously, but she kept up a calm facade, wiping away tears that seemed rehearsed. My sister laughed a little too loudly, trying to diffuse the tension, while Dad sat with a stiff smile, barely meeting my gaze. And then there was the lawyer, slick, polished, and disturbingly confident. He slid the thick stack of papers toward me, as if this was just another routine meeting. Not a calculated ambush, just a few signatures, he said smoothly. Temporary transfer, all for the good of the family. My fingers trembled as I reached for the pen. My heart hammered in my chest, every instinct screaming at me that this was wrong. But I had to play along. Slowly, I signed the first page, then the next. I could see relief wash over their faces. My sister clapped softly, See, that wasn't so hard. I leaned back, fighting the urge to throw the pen down and yell. Instead, I smiled. A cold, slow smile. Then I calmly pushed the documents back toward the lawyer. "Oh, by the way," I said softly, "these signatures are forged." The room froze. Silence so thick it echoed. Mom's expression crumbled like a mask falling off. My sister's cheeks flushed crimson, eyes wide with shock. Dad's face twisted into a grimace, not of guilt, but of furious betrayal. I stood up, voice steady but cold. "I came here because I thought my father was dying." I looked around, meeting each pair of eyes. "But you manipulated my love for this family to try and steal everything I worked for." I took a breath. "Don't call me again unless it's a real emergency." Turning toward the door, I heard my uncle's voice behind me. "Wait, we can explain." Without looking back, I walked out and slammed the door behind me. Outside, the cold night air hit me like a shock, but it felt strangely liberating. I didn't go to a hotel. Instead, I went straight to the bank. If my family was desperate enough to try this, then there was more going on beneath the surface, and I was going to uncover every dirty secret, because this wasn't just a family matter anymore. It was war. The next morning, I woke up on adrenaline and just a few hours of restless sleep. My mind was a whirlwind of questions and suspicion. That look in Dad's eyes, the cold calculation, played over and over in my head. I knew I couldn't trust the smiling faces I'd left behind. After a quick breakfast, I made my way to the one person I hoped might have some answers. My cousin Mark. Mark wasn't a mastermind, more like a follower. Someone caught in the middle of things bigger than he understood. But maybe he'd seen something or overheard plans, or could offer a clue. I found him at a small cafe near the edge of town, nursing a coffee and looking far too casual for someone involved in a family crisis. When he spotted me, his face paled, not out of fear, but because he knew the storm had arrived. He tried to keep it light, but I didn't give him the chance. "I know something's wrong," I said firmly, folding my arms. "Tell me everything." Mark hesitated, then sighed. The dam broke. He told me about the family business, how it had been hemorrhaging money for years, despite Dad's optimistic reports. Bad investments, shady deals, and a series of missteps that piled debt upon debt. "There's a warehouse deal that went south," he said, "and something about a shell company that disappeared overnight. Nobody's sure what happened." I felt my stomach twist. But there was worse. A former employee filed a whistleblower claim. Something about tax fraud and falsified earnings. The company's under investigation. It was like a punch to the gut. I stood outside the cafe. Everything I'd grown up around, the house, the business, the family legacy, was crumbling beneath me. And my family had used my love and loyalty as a weapon to keep it afloat. I didn't know what came next, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to let them drag me down with them. The weight of betrayal sat heavy on my shoulders as I stepped into the office of the lawyer I trusted most. Someone I'd worked with for years in my own company. The kind of person who didn't flinch when the stakes were high, and who knew exactly how to cut through the legal fog. I laid out everything: the forged documents, the fake heart attack, the desperate attempts to trap me into signing over my assets. She listened, eyes steady, voice calm but firm. "This isn't just family drama," she said. "It's fraud. If they try to use those signatures in any financial transaction, it could be criminal." Her words gave me a sliver of hope in the dark storm I was facing. We gathered the evidence, the papers I signed, the phone calls, the timeline of events. Every detail mattered. 2 weeks later, I got the call. They tried to submit the documents to a private lender, my lawyer said, but the lender flagged it. Your signatures don't match, and the discrepancies have raised red flags. The transaction has been frozen, and an investigation is underway. I exhaled a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. The next step was confrontation. I went back to the family home, not to yell, not to plead, but to lay down the truth like a judge's verdict. They answered the door with wide eyes, as if seeing a ghost. I know everything, I told them. The debts, the lawsuit, the fraud, the lies. The investigation has started. My mother's face crumpled into tears. My sister begged for mercy. Dad just stared, his silence heavier than any accusation. He didn't speak, but his eyes told me everything. That day, I stopped being their golden goose. I became the consequence they never expected. I told them flat out. I was severing all legal and financial ties, changing my will, updating account protections, freezing any assets linked to the family business. If I hear from any of you again, I said, I won't hesitate to go public. The room was thick with tension. No apologies, no regrets, just a cold, hard reality. I walked away and never looked back. Letting go of family is never easy. It's like amputating a limb you grew up depending on. The ache hits hardest on holidays. But what doesn't ache? My peace of mind, my bank account, my mornings free from dread. I still hear whispers, bits of gossip from distant relatives, news that the business has collapsed, the lawsuit dragging on, my sister moving out. None of it surprises me. They built a house of cards, thinking I'd hold it up forever. But I'm done holding what was never mine to carry. The silence after the storm was both a relief and a challenge. For months, I lived in a quiet space I hadn't known in years, free from manipulation, free from the constant weight of betrayal. But freedom came with its own pain. Letting go of family, no matter how toxic, feels like losing a part of yourself. Holidays were the hardest. The empty seats, the unanswered calls, the memories that refused to fade. But over time, I began to heal. I filled my days with new routines, morning runs through quiet parks, long coffee dates with friends who loved me. For me, and evenings lost in books that reminded me I was not alone. I rebuilt my life on my own terms. 1 year later, I stood in my own home, surrounded not by family, but by chosen family. People who had stood by me, supported me, and celebrated my victories without hidden agendas. My phone buzzed with a message about my father's recent hospital stay. For a moment, old feelings stirred, but I didn't hesitate. I sent back a simple, honest message, no blame, no anger, just peace. I had learned that family isn't defined by blood or shared history, but by respect, love, and trust. My story isn't one of revenge or bitterness. It's one of strength, of reclaiming my power, of choosing peace over pain. I'm no longer the person who flew across the country to sign away her life. I'm the woman who stood her ground, who faced betrayal and walked away stronger. And in that, I found my true home.